In this episode, I meet Pat Hickey of Make. What I think you'll all get out of this episode is that Make are a small business in the Northwest. Pat joined them about a year ago. He joined his fellow business partner, Matt, who decided that he wanted Pat to come into the business and take an equity stake straight away. One of the challenges about being a small business owner is having to make all the decisions yourself, having all the responsibility yourself. So I think it was a very brave decision of Matt's, but also of Pat's, for them both to come together and be more of a united force together. And I think you'll get a lot out of this and make people think about, should you do it all on your own? Is it better to have somebody you can enjoy the journey with? Really interesting small business that I think are going to grow rapidly. They've got some really good foundations. But yeah, I do think you'll all get a lot out of the concept of bringing somebody else on as an equity holder to support your growth. Right, so today joined by Pat Hickey of Make, and it's a small consultancy based in the Northwest. I guess, Pat, welcome to the pod, and I guess over to you if you can just maybe tell us a bit about the business, what it is in terms of current headcount, maybe core sectors you're focused in.
Yeah, sure. No, thanks very much, Paul. Yeah, excited to be here.
Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, so we're a small consultancy, primarily based out of Bryfield, just north of Burnley.
Okay.
We've also got a small office in Ellesmere Port as well to help serve that. That's where I'm from originally, which helps. So at the moment there's a team of 4 of us. We've also got a graduate starting for a long placement in September. That'll be great. Matt, business partner Matthew, set up the business 2.5 years ago.
Okay.
And I've known Matt personally for best part of 15 years.
Yeah.
Similar career trajectories really, where started contractor QS side. I was at Waits, he was at Barnfield. We met at Waits. Training QSs, looking after roller shutter packages and skips and that sort of
starting somewhere,
kind of went similar. We went kind of client side then actually, both of us, and then ended up going consultancy. And Matt decided to do his own thing a couple of years ago, and then about 18 months ago, strong arm me into joining. So it's been it's exciting time. It's been an exciting couple of years really.
Good.
Something I've always wanted to do. And to be honest, Matt should be here, to be honest, rather than me. He was the one, but he was the initial push, and I needed that push really as well, to make the move. Yeah,
good. Okay, awesome. So, 4 of you now, is there a particular sector focus, would you say, in terms of what you guys work in mainly?
No, so it's a bit of a mixture really. It's probably 50-50 split between public and private sector.
Okay.
But in terms of actual, kind of use type of project, more or less anything, to be honest. Within the public sector, we've got a mix of projects like markets, which are still under previous LUF funding from government. Right. We're looking at residential schemes on behalf of local authorities, commercial projects, so office developments as well, which is really exciting. And then on the private side, again, a real mixture. So we've recently been appointed on a new office development in Manchester, which is really exciting. First big city centre development. As well as some private residential as well. We've got a big scheme in Sale with our client PIC Homes, probably our biggest private sector client. That's sort of circa 90 units in Sale. Really exciting scheme to be involved in. That again, that's one that Matt leads on really. Right. Business is, like I say, kind of split. It's not a clean cut, but I usually lead on the public sector side, and Matt leads on the private sector. But a small business, we need to remain agile and help out where we can, really, on the peaks and troughs of the joys of a small business.
Yeah, amazing. Good. And so you say Matt set up the business 2 years ago?
Probably close to 3 years ago now, actually. Yeah. So he was with a private developer based in Manchester. Right. And I think he's probably similar to myself, where it's something he's always wanted to do. Yeah. He's quite entrepreneurial, Matt, and he set up the business. It was when I joined. It was, I think he just kind of recently got out of his back bedroom and had a small office in Edgerton. It was a good time to join the business. We moved offices from Edgerton into where we are now at Northlight in Bryfield about 6 months ago, and we're actually moving at the end of the month. Still saying Northlight, but a bit bigger office.
That's a good story then.
Yeah, it is
brilliant. That's nice.
It is. It's exciting. Yeah, it's we took the space 6 months ago. No kind of plans to. We don't have longer term plans to grow to this massive business. Really, we want to stay quite small. We'd be a director-led business and just offer a good service to clients. I think that's something that we want to kind of embed from the start. and just keep doing a good job.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
So quite interesting choice of Matt's at the time to say, right, I've set my business and then I'm going to give 50% of it away.
Yeah, it's daft, wasn't it?
well, or intelligent actually, depending on how you look at it. But equally, so I guess we can't necessarily ask Matt that, but I mean, I'm sure you guys have talked about it, what was maybe that thought process there. But equally for you, taking that plunge then and saying, right, this is the right thing to do in the right time to do that. What was the motivation, do you think, from both of you? I know you've known each other a long time, but
yeah, good personal friends, and we do try and keep business separate from personal, but the two inevitably intermingle, which is a bit of a bad thing, I think. I think perhaps Matt's potentially, like I say, a bit more entrepreneurial than myself, and that was the push I needed. I think where we were in our careers, I was with High Projects, really good. We work small consultants now, very much a medium, large size consultants.
Doing some well, haven't they?
Yeah. One thing I would say is when I came to the directors and said I was leaving, they were really supportive, to be honest.
Nice,
which is good. Really nice, really nice of them. So it was interesting. Obviously, it was a big jump, particularly for myself, to leave a secure job where I was enjoying it. They were a good business to work for. But the opportunity to do something that was kind of would be 50-50 with one of my good friends, to do my own thing, it was an opportunity I couldn't really pass up. I think from Matt's point of view, maybe while we had similar career paths, with my more public sector background, I used to work for, before Hive, I was with a company called PSP, Public Sector Partnership.
Oh, yeah.
So very much public sector focused. We didn't do any kind of private work. All our clients were public sector consultancy, but at the time, there was also a model where we kind of took ownership and joint ventures with local authorities. But
that fascinating business, I'm just like, is it, you don't know they exist, do you?
No.
There's one of those businesses you just don't really know they exist.
Yeah, and again, that was a good company to work for, but I think that gave me a good insight into the public sector, and maybe that's something that Matt maybe didn't have himself, or we do obviously work with public sector clients, but because he'd been more private, he'd working directly for a private developer. Sometimes it's a bit of a different way to work with the public sector, and it's
different language.
Yeah, different language. Obviously maybe a different, maybe not say a different pace, but a different way to get projects through. And that kind of due diligence and that. What's the word I'm looking for? That kind of back up to decision making that. Yeah. Maybe sometimes you don't
bureaucracy
need.
At all.
That's it. Yeah, maybe you don't need that in the private sector as much. You can pick up the phone to your client and say, do you want to make this change or not? Where the public sector, it's a bit more iterative, and you need to bring a lot more people on the journey. So obviously, I can't speak for Matt, but when we did sort of chat at the time, that was probably the main thing that I'd bring that kind of public sector, but also as well, Matt hadn't worked for a consultancy where I had. Obviously, I'd worked for PSP and Hive. Yeah, Matt had went from a contractor to work for a private developer. I think the reason Matt set up the business was working for the developer, maybe getting a mixed service from some of the project management and quantity surveying consultancies that he was working with. And I think it's probably come from what I said earlier around wanting to, have a small team that delivers a senior-led service. We see it quite a lot from, larger consultancies where, you deal with a director. I used to work for a private developer as well, and FI Real Estate over in Chorley, and we've seen it where, you'd see a director day one, when they were tenders,
never see him again.
And never see him again. And that's
apart from the golf day,
definitely, and that's genuinely that's what we really want to try and avoid. We've got two good really people. We've got Catherine coming on as associate director. She joined us a couple of months ago from Anderson Gable. She's been a really good asset. Again, good mix of public and private sector experience. Right. We've got Michael, who was our,
and she's doing PM still, or building surveying.
PM,
right?
Yeah. So yes. So she's MCIOB, really experienced head. Good to have someone like that in the business. And then Michael, he's kind of our commercial director. So very much traditional quantity surveyor. He's pulled together a bill of quants, in 2 minutes. He's great to have in the business. And everyone's got their different skill sets. Good. I think something that maybe sets us apart sometimes is the fact that we've got a bit of a contractor background. Myself and Matt have been on site, worked in a cold site cabin in the middle of winter. Michael the same. I think that gives us a little bit of a different edge potentially, and understanding how things are built, how things actually work on site, what to look out for in terms of relationships with contractors, but then also as well knowing how to work with contractors and making sure it's it's not a one fight from the start really.
And I think there's been a bit of an evolution in the consultancy world, I think, anyway, that like if you look particularly at cost management, it's like it's not about just providing cost management service, it's about being a more commercially led service so that you're properly driving it for the interest of both the client and also the contractor. So absolutely, I think I'm seeing a lot more consultancies now wanting people from a contractor's background.
Yeah.
Because you may be perceived as more commercially savvy, let's say, than maybe someone who's spent their whole life in a consultancy environment.
No, 100%. You know, working on site for a contractor, I know what gaps they're looking for.
Yeah.
And Matt's the same, Michael's the same. You know, but like I say, it's not all about working against the contractor all the time.
Yeah.
You know, it's about working with them.
Everyone should try and win, shouldn't they? That's what we keep on screwing up in this country. Spent quite a bit of time in the US, and in the US, it's an expectation that the contractor makes money.
Yeah.
They've got to make money.
The risk, you know, on a sign and build contract, they are taking a lot of risk. You know, you know, we've seen it. You know, I started my career 2009, just come out of recession, and you know, there was decisions that were made within not just the business I work for, but across the industry.
Yep.
I'm aware of contractors bidding work at negative overhead profit to win the work, and that, you know, it's easy to look in hindsight, but it was a tight environment at the time. But it shouldn't be like that, you know, because then it's hard work from the start, and especially when I was contractor side, you know, for whatever reason, that decisions were made, and it was sometimes difficult, you know, because you fall out with clients on day one. So yeah, and then I suppose another thing would add on that is the fact that then we kind of went more client side, understanding not just kind of on site, but then what drives value. I worked for FI, for instance. Worked on some decent sized residential projects in London, quite a bit of industrial as well. And it's understanding when we're looking to make a decision or recommend to the client making a decision, it's not just about cost. There's a value aspect to that in the long run, whether that's an increase in rent, you're looking at sales values of residential properties, you know, what impact is that decision having on the end product? And that's what we try and implement that in any kind of recommendation forward to a client as well, really. Yeah,
brilliant. And the value you can add for that.
Yeah.
I think coming back to the whole you and Matt coming together, there's a danger with a lot of owners of businesses that they kind of want all of it and want to do all of it. Maybe don't. I think there's a lot of businesses who don't kind of bring on other people with equity soon enough. Yeah. And the danger is until you've got that, you may be not as invested. But on the flip side, also what Matt will now have from you is somebody who's kind of in the trenches with you, and you know, you both, you know, you can both bounce off and sound off, and you can, you know, you're both collectively sharing the hard days and the good days. You're sharing the wins and the losses collectively, and there's a lot to be said for that. You know,
100%. I think you know, it is hard work. I'm sure you know yourself.
Absolutely,
you know, this weekend we'll be working over the bank holiday, making sure that we're set for next week. But yeah, maybe that was obviously part of Matt's decision, was to maybe have someone he knew personally and trusted. You know,
100%. But trust is massive in a business relationship. It's critical, I think.
It is, yeah. And I'd be lying if I said we haven't had our disagreements, but that's always a good thing about the
creative tensions.
That's what we'll call it. Yeah, we're still friends so far.
And it's important, like you say, it gets increasingly difficult. I think having done that myself and doing it myself with fellow business owners, but you've got to try and separate and recognise, look, it is just business, and naturally sometimes it's good to have a bit of healthy tension. It's good to have different viewpoints, because at the end of the day, otherwise you're in just an echo chamber where it's just one person making decisions all the time.
Yeah.
Whereas you know, you may, you know, collectively both reach the right decision by collectively sitting down and sometimes having a bit of a heated discussion about it.
Yeah.
But hopefully the right outcome is reached each time then as well.
No, I think it's, you know, for instance, when a new opportunity comes across the table, it's important to have a different point of view. And, you know, I won't say who's who, but, you know, if one of us might say, well, we need to do, you know, the fee needs to be here, one of us might be a bit further off, and we need to agree, you know, in terms of somewhere in the middle. And it's good to, like you say, because if it was just one person making that decision, you'd either, price is probably not the resource required to deliver it, or conversely, you know, you'd never win a job because it's finding that right balance really between being able to have a constructive, you know, dialogue, and like I say, like separating that then from, you know, so right, we're going for a run afterwards then, and you know, that kind of thing.
100%. No, I think there's a lot of value in that, without a doubt.
No, for sure.
So you said obviously, Pat, you're not necessarily looking to grow, but I imagine there's still some growth plan there. What do you think are the kind of trigger points, or have you got any, are there any kind of, I'm trying to think what the word is, are there any kind of criteria for yourselves in terms of what will lead to further growth?
Yeah, I think that the reason we're not kind of putting pressure on ourselves is we're kind of enjoying what we do.
Which is important.
Yeah. We're out there chasing work, which is a good position to be in. It has come kind of organically, and that's probably how we want to keep it.
Yeah.
If 10 jobs come tomorrow and we want to do every single one, I suppose that how on earth we're going to do that. But then
panic.
We'd give you a call.
Excellent.
But I think it'll be more, when the right jobs come about for the right clients, especially existing clients, we'll make that decision. I think when we took Catherine on, that was based on the work we'd already secured, and it was making sure that the business is at a bit of a stress point, especially a small business, to go to overhead to increase by more or less 20-25% overnight is that's a big ask. So it needs to make sure that we've got the wiggle room, but we've been sensible with the business from the start, and that's probably rules that kind of Matt set out when I first joined the business. Is we're in a good position in terms of turnover and cash in the bank.
Nice.
Making sure we've got the reserves there for when there is a dry spell that we can make sure we kind of weather that and, like I say, look to grow the business organically. I think it's definitely in terms of not wanting to put pressure ourselves in terms of we want to grow to a 20-person, 30-person consultancy. I think, it's where it feels good at the moment. We've got some really good sized projects on for, some big reputable clients. And, part of it is not wanting to rock the boat as well too much, we a lot of our work is kind of hyper focused on locality, focusing on Lancashire, West Yorkshire, obviously Cheshire with Ellesmere Port, but not wanting to bite off more than we can chew, because I think as soon as we start to kind of chase work, we maybe lose that little bit, that kind of service that sets us apart, maybe potentially in some clients' eyes. I wouldn't want to lose that, for the sake of an extra person when we're not quite ready for it, I think.
Yeah, look, it makes a lot of sense. You grow by doing a decent job for existing clients. So you can always find new clients, but what you don't want to do is go backwards with existing clients. You ideally want to see growth with that existing client, and that comes from just doing a great job, doesn't it?
100%. And the right people are sometimes, you probably know better than anyone. Sometimes the right people are hard to come by, especially.
They are, yeah.
Something I've definitely found is, if it's your business, it's. You are handing responsibility over to someone, even if someone like Catherine come in who's got, to be honest, far more years of experience than us, and it's about us learning to let go of that as well, which is something that we're getting to grips with. I think is probably the first thing, but then it's definitely around making sure that we're in a good position when we come to make the next move.
Yeah, definitely. It's you've naturally got to bring somebody else on to grow. They will naturally have their own way of doing things. I think as long as the business also kind of sets clear mandates, the absolutely want you to be an individual, but these are the guardrails. This is us. These are the things we won't accept, because it's kind of our name above the door, and we've got to make sure that the client gets a degree of consistent service from the business.
Yeah, that's it. I think we've kind of set a framework. The good thing is that we've come from a corporate background, and of course big corporate businesses have the failings and frustrations, and we don't want to be over the top with that kind of thing, but there is lessons to be learned there in terms of, like you say, a consistent service, whether I'm on a project, Michael's on a project, Catherine's on a project, or Matt. It's about delivering that same level of service. So it's about putting in processes in place within the business, which again, as a small business, you need to kind of remain flexible, because every job's different. On some projects it might be a purely traditional EA QS service. On others it could be kind of full program management, where for instance we're managing a project with Rosendale Borough Council at the moment.
Right.
So we kind of oversee a number of projects for them. Part of our role is procuring an operator for the market in Rawtenstall. Okay. Which is really interesting to be involved in. So that's a little bit different than pure traditional construction project management. So, and it's a bit boring, but the traditional file structure of a project doesn't necessarily fit into that kind of role.
Right, okay.
It's a little bit different. So, it's making sure that we've got them processes in place to remain agile for when them opportunities come about, really.
Yeah, it must be fascinating. Where do you go out finding that kind of organisational operator?
It's interesting, yeah. I mean, worked on projects before on some similar kind of things, and we're working on other projects where we're doing a kind of a similar role for found a commercial operator.
Right, cool.
So yeah, I think part of it comes from recommendations from clients, but you know, it's a procurement. You know, I suppose it's a procurement exercise.
Right. Yeah.
No different than construction setting. You know, if we're working for a public sector, particularly, it's about setting them boundaries in place, making sure you're kind of delivering best value, and that isn't always obviously monetary value. For instance, with something like Rottenstone Market, it's about it being like the centre of a community for that big town.
Look after all the stakeholders involved in that. Yeah.
You know, making sure that the individual traders are happy, making sure that the council are getting a good return on the deal as well. But you know, something like a market in a small market town, that's what makes the town.
100%. Yeah.
So it's really interesting to be involved with projects like that.
Nice, good, excellent. And so, have you had any learnings from? Because obviously, you know, previously, Pat, you managed teams on behalf of another business, and you know, managed clients and grew headcount and all that kind of good stuff. Is there anything you would say you've personally learned along your journey now, being a kind of business owner that's different, that you know you've learned or looked differently, or maybe changed over time?
Yeah, there's probably too many to count. Learning every day's a school day. I think that probably what I said earlier on, the biggest one is learning to kind of let go of, especially as a business owner, letting go of work and making sure allowing people to kind of do a good job. As you know, far more experienced people than myself, and learning off them as well. You know, bringing experienced people into the business. You know, learning from them and how they've done it elsewhere. Me and Matt are still relatively young. You know, back's starting to hurt a little bit, but I think making sure that we're always learning from everyone around us, and that's not just obviously people we work with. It's colleagues in the industry, it's it's clients, it's other consultancies that we're still good friends with, and and kind of socialise as well with. It's really important just to kind of be a sponge really and taking as much as we can. I mentioned obviously Hive earlier, and they've obviously kind of smashed it with a business. 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, they're really well.
And learning how them 4 directors have managed their teams as well, and keeping people incentivised and keeping it fresh as well. I think we are still a relatively young team in terms of the age of the business. This time next year, wherever we are in terms of headcount, making sure it keeps fresh and doesn't get stale, because some of our projects are 2, 3, 4, 5 years long potentially. So making sure that people are still engaged and is key. Definitely.
Good. Yeah, I think. Firstly, I think as a business owner, you can often be the one who neglects your own development, and we should all be lifelong learners, shouldn't we? I think there's massive importance in that. Yeah. But equally, coming back to your earlier point, Pat, about wanting to keep the business relatively, or not necessarily growing for growing's sake. The danger that if you do that, a lot of businesses have gone wrong and have come unthreaded because they lose the culture, because what originally got them to be a great business, they've kind of lost sight of. And there's a real danger with that, and there's the danger that you start coming in where, as the owners, you don't start enjoying coming into business every day, which is a really dangerous place to be, I think. You start almost to resent your business, which is not a great place to be. And actually, sometimes small is beautiful, isn't it? You don't need to grow for growing's sake. You need to make sure you're profitable. That's the key thing, because if you start to lose track of that and cash flow becomes an issue, coming back to some contractors doing negative bidding, there's a real danger. You understand the mentality and why they need to do it, and particularly I get for a contractor, it's not as easy to scale back costs as maybe it is within a consultancy environment, but still, it's always a dangerous game to play if you're just not running a profitable business that you also enjoy being in. That's
it. And we want whoever comes to work with us and to enjoy working with us. And it's it's making sure that people feel like they have a stake in that business as well. And incentivizing people on that basis as well.
Nice, good. Yeah. Good, excellent. And are you all in the office? Are you all? What's the setup?
We try to be.
Good.
Obviously, we're a mixture, obviously, in terms of our sites spread across the northwest. A couple of sites in the Midlands actually, but predominantly it's obviously Great Manchester, Lancashire, West Yorkshire.
Cool.
Primarily we try and be in the office if we can, but we're flexible. Matt's just had a newborn. About 6-7 weeks ago.
Wow. No sleep.
So he's coming into work for a rest, I think.
Absolutely.
But and we obviously remain flexible with anyone we're working with, especially post-COVID. And I think back to projects I've been on. I remember I was on a project in Southampton, flying down for half an hour meeting in a Starbucks, and then kind of, and why on earth have I flew down for? And that's just the way of the world now, isn't it? But as a small team, I do think it's important that we see each other, at least a couple of times a week.
Absolutely.
And I think it's better for us to just bounce ideas off each other.
Of course it is.
You mentioned earlier about kind of sitting in your own echo chamber kind of thing. And, it's so much easier just to kind of pop my head over the desk and say, look, Catherine, what do you think of this? Or
absolutely.
This for a sec.
So
we try and be in the office if we can. I think we've just been delivering a better service.
Good, excellent.
Yeah.
And I think the thing that fascinates a lot of people is what are you, because we're in an ever-changing world with this, what's your business's focus around kind of technology? What are you using now in terms of software, etc.? What do you see the future like in that regard?
Yeah, I mean, I had a good think about this, and especially coming from maybe a contractor background, can be a bit Luddite sometimes and that kind of thing. And we're definitely trying our best to adopt new technology. AI is massive. It is going to change the way the industry works. How that actually is, I'm not sure yet. And I don't think probably anyone is.
No, I agree.
I think it's using that technology wisely at the moment. It does stick out like a sore thumb. I think when you see a report, or
absolutely,
I've seen a couple maybe like planning reports that have come through recently on something. It does stick out, and people aren't using that kind of software correctly and at least diligently, I think. In terms of other like project management software, I think that there's a few different bits we use, and looking to at least trial on our projects. We think as clients potentially maybe start to move away from two-stage D&B, I think it becomes more critical that project managers are actually on top of program as well.
Yeah,
on behalf of clients. And I think that embedding software in that kind of monitors that on an accurate basis in terms of, but that's on us then to feed that into the software and make sure that's kind of up to date day to day. So
data is massive in ours. All this stuff is that there's a lot of really clever products out there, but if there's crap data or worse, no data going into it, then it quickly becomes not a good product. And,
that's it. So I think it's probably traditional with the construction industry that we're usually slow to catch up. So it'll be interesting to see how it goes over the next few years. Like I say, particularly with AI, it's interesting. Even looking at sort of more wider master plans. How can a town centre master plan or a city centre master plan? How can AI be built into that in terms of maybe look at existing plan applications? Rather than needing to trawl through, maybe it's looking at things like sales rates and build rates and rental rates with in the area. Maybe looking in the last 3-5 years. Starts you can start to pull together a master plan on a town or city centre probably a bit more quickly than traditionally, which is quite interesting. So it'd be interesting to see how that goes as well.
I think certainly with AI, people have got to use it for what it's good at the moment, and it will obviously keep on getting better. It's like we're just recently going through a contract agreement with a large consultancy to work with them, and the terms are a 23-page document. It's like right. That's going straight into highlight to me the clauses that I should be worried about here.
Yes, please.
And it was really good, and I did read through the whole document, but the clauses it identified as the ones that I should be concerned about were the ones I should have been concerned about. In some ways, it makes a lot of sense. So coming back to something that can track through, previous planning applications, maybe there's some value in that, isn't it? To say, right, okay, look, there's this thing here that might work with that. So
and if we do quite a bit of early stage feasibility stuff, and it might be the case that we use it for, we have used it recently actually in terms of review rejected planning applications in that area and understand why they were rejected.
Brilliant.
Start to get them lessons learned. But then obviously looking at the successful planning applications and seeing if there's any kind of commonalities, is that the right word? Consistency across them successful planning applications.
And that's exactly what it should be used for, as opposed to, like you say, where you've got to put a bid in and you can see someone's clearly just used it to write the bid, and it's like, it looks generic, it sounds probably Americanized, and it's like, that bit you guys have got dashes everywhere. You guys have, that bit is where you got to put in the actual, your essence of your business. It's like people use ChatGPT to write LinkedIn posts. It's like, no, write your own post. It's got to be your voice. It's got to be genuine. It's not going to sound vanilla like everything else that's out there.
No, exactly. Yeah, like you say, it does stick out, doesn't it? Like a sore thumb, I think, sometimes when people use it. But I think in particular, that kind of early stage feasibility side is something where it can be really interesting. And start to kind of spit out some really good metrics for us to help advise our clients early on.
Yeah.
And then we'll look to get a professional team on board then afterwards to add a bit more kind of rigor to the process.
Yeah, absolutely. Good. Pat, I normally ask this at the beginning of the episode, but I've completely forgot to. But we'll ask you now. So go on to the last question. So, how did you get into the industry in the first place? I think people are really fascinated, and there's a whole big discussion now about the industry really suffering I think a really critical skills crisis. That they reckon a quarter of the current population of construction workers, that's white collar and blue collar, is going to be reduced by a quarter, 500,000 people in the next 5 or 10 years. And so I think we've got a real issue about we need more people to come into the industry. But how did you get into the industry in the first place?
Yeah, it's probably similar to most people, kind of fall into it, really. I got an opportunity to do a bit of a summer placement with Waits Construction and it can be a quantity surveyor. I was like, oh, what's that? So
what age was
17.
Right, okay.
Yeah, so
in between you're doing A-levels at the time? Or
just dropped out of A-level, actually.
Right, okay.
Yeah, so found that, done well with GCSEs and then found A-level just in the end needed something new.
Wasn't for you, yeah.
So, I got an opportunity to, do you want to be a QS for 6 weeks? So I said, go on, what's that? I said yes, and that's what it was then afterwards. It was a, ended up kind of staying on with Waits, and I was with Waits for sort of 6 years. It's just one of them kind of things where you look back and, it was just, they were building a leisure centre in Ellesmere Port, and then they were looking at, ended up going to a project in for Liverpool John Moores University.
Right.
What was really good is that it was almost like an apprenticeship where then Waits helped me through my degree as well.
Brilliant.
So HNC degree, which was, obviously great. I think there's a real kind of PR exercise for construction. I think to try and attract people into the industry. Especially on the more kind of professional services side. People don't know it exists as a good, well-paid career path. People see construction and by no means saying that my dad's a ground worker. He's done well for himself. But people see construction as just kind of on site, and don't see that kind of professional services side. And there's definitely, it's probably a question for someone far more kind of intelligent than myself. But there's a PR exercise to do around making.
I'd say we all need to talk about it, because it's like why is it not a? Because the reality is most construction professionals, because of such an increasing skills shortage, it's going to increasingly be a very well paid job, whether you're a trade or whether you're in the professional services side of it, it's going to be increasingly paid very well. So we need to be encouraging more people into the industry, and it almost collectively, I think, it has to be a big discussion. Everyone has to have to work out what the hell we're going to do. Because if the numbers are to be believed, that we're going to lose a quarter of the kind of working population within the construction sector, it's like we know how constrained it is at certain times to get stuff delivered now. How's it going to happen? How's it going to be in another 5 or 10 years when there's even less people to do all the work?
Even like as I mentioned before, around finding the right people, and that is difficult, and has probably even more difficult. I volunteer for, it's called Lancashire Enterprise Academy, so we kind of go into schools and as a careers advisor.
Oh, nice.
And it's not just about construction, but obviously I do have that kind of construction. So have you thought about this as a career path? It's just not something that I even considered. It's probably the same for maybe 99% of the people in the industry. It's a real shame, because it's a well-paid, dependable, professional job that that's can provide. At the end of the day, that's what it's all about.
And the country continues to need. It will never go away, will it? Whether it be building new things or maintaining existing things. We have to keep doing it. It's a big part of the GDP of the UK, so it's something we have to keep going with.
No, 100%. And the opportunity that I was given with Waits and the directors at the time, learning off them and how they kind of got me into the business and embedded me into the business, and that's something that again mentioned before about being a sponge and taking the best of all kind of managers and directors I've had over the years. But the director at the time was a guy called John Shannon. Right, he was at Seddons now. Right. And he was obviously like kind of big on culture. And you mentioned it obviously earlier on about being a small business, and that's still been really important.
Good.
I think that's something that the industry needs to get to grips with a bit more, I think.
Without a doubt. And make it a more just a there's still some stuff to do around it being a better place to work and not being as hostile to it feeling more inclusive, I guess, as an industry, which I still think there's some work to do.
You know, not gonna lie that, you know, going in as a 17-year-old lad into site, that was daunting and sometimes difficult. Being honest, you know, of course there was difficulties, and I suppose they will look back and think it was probably it was a good thing. To be honest, you know, probably I grew up maybe in that first year a bit outside than probably, you know, ever have done. To be honest, I was kind of blessed. You know, got my hair cut. That was the year. I was in, stuck with a fringe. Yeah. So yeah, I think it was a good avenue into the industry. And I think that the fact that then obviously, you know, went client side with a director who left Waits actually, and got that opportunity to go and kind of get out of contractor QS and go to client side development management. That was something I was really happy about as well.
Good, amazing. You may have just answered this. I always end with the same question. In terms of your career, who would you say has been the best boss or manager you've ever worked with, and why?
That's an interesting question. That I think, you know, I've always tried to take bits from every kind of manager I've worked with, the good and the bad bits. You know, no one's kind of flawless, and I think everyone kind of has faults. Obviously, you know, talked about the directors at Hive. I had really good managers at PSP with Lena and Kate as well. But mentioned John earlier, but I think so. There's a guy called Mark Adams who was at Waits. He was key account director, so he was more kind of client side management. And there was, you know, always kind of a tension there with being an on-site QS, you know, usually arguing with the client, and then Mark would come in and smooth it over. And Mark was the guy who actually left Waits to go work for the private developer and convinced me to make the move. So yeah, and you know, Mark was another one who was kind of big on culture, big on making people kind of bought into the business and the process, and really looked after me at that period. So yeah, I wouldn't want to kind of pick someone. The biggest change for me, because I think it wasn't for Mark, I'd be working as a you know, probably good career as a contractor QS. But if I hadn't made that move to go client side, because I remember he was trying to convince me at the time, and because, you know, all I knew was contractor QS, and I thought it was a brilliant job. You know, I loved it, and you know, I'm sure I would have if I'd stayed doing it. But to convince me to go work for a developer, I'll always be kind of thankful for that, because I might not have made that move otherwise. Really.
Oh, amazing. Yeah. Good. Brilliant. Yeah. Pat, thanks for your time.
No, thanks very much.
Really appreciate it. I want to see what happens with Make, see if it continues to grow, which I'm sure it will do, but equally, like you say, do it at a pace and size that is right for the business. I look forward to seeing what comes of it.
No, right, well, much appreciated.
Nice one. Thanks for being on it. Cheers.